when I was just a little guy, maybe about 5 or 6 years old, I would go to my grandmother's and I would always feel safe. I would always feel a particular love that embraced me, even when she didn't embrace me. She embraced me with her eyes, she embraced me with what she said to me and how she cared for me. And I used to embrace her back. I used to grab her around the knees. And I would look up at her and I would say, Oma, you my best friend in the whole world. And I meant it with all my little heart. And I still do. Because she really did heal a multitude of wounds in me. Her love healed me from things that could have been far worse in terms of consequences if I didn't have someone there. My parents are both immigrants and both casualties of the Second World War. Both of them were prisoners of war. Both of them carried much shrapnel in their heart because of the treatment that they received from others. And the war continued in our home. They had no skills. They had no way in which they could work through their PTSD as we understand it now. And so they fought constantly, and my sister and I were caught in the middle of it. And it was always a war zone. I have one traumatic memory of my father pulling one arm and my mother pulling the other arm and saying, he goes with me. No, he goes with me. And my little heart was torn apart. And so that's where it started. And then there were other things. I had childhood sexual abuse by someone I respected very much. And there was a lot of bullying too. I was a more sensitive kind of boy. And that was unfortunately something that worked against me, and also was a cause of wounding in my life. Well, so the long and short of it is, this woman, my grandmother, was like a refuge for my heart, a place where I could heal my soul whenever I was with her. My grandmother was consistently who she was all the time. She was a humble woman. She was an ordinary woman, a farmer's daughter, lived in a small village in Hungary. And how she became the extraordinary woman she was by tragedy and trauma in her own life. She was the daughter of an alcoholic father. And her mother was beaten constantly by their father. And at one occasion, in self-defense, the mother killed the alcoholic father. And my grandmother's mother was imprisoned for a year. And in a little village, there was a great scandal. So she lived with a terrible stigma that her mother was this killer. And she had to live with this trauma of her father dying as well, and her mother being shamed. And I believe it's challenged her to be the best person she could be, that she wouldn't be judged. Maybe that's what was behind it. But she just became this woman of virtue, is all I can say. And she, anyone who knew her would tell you that she was the nicest woman you would ever meet. Or better yet, the kindest woman you'd ever meet. She bought gifts for everyone. When she went to her dentist, she would bring her dentist a gift. She grew gardens in her house that were just phenomenal. She loved beauty. There was a rose bush, a glorious tea rose, big, beautiful, rose-colored tea rose that grew beside her house, and I associated that rose to who she was. And I do to this day. My grandmother was this big, beautiful, fragrant rose. And I still carry the scent of her sanctity in my life. And she really was incarnation of love for me. She was a person who knew what loving was, and she gave herself. She was someone, as I said, love, what I think love is characterized as is a giving of self, a sharing of self. And she did that constantly with everyone, not just me and the family. And she didn't judge my parents, even though they could have easily been judged, especially in how they were treating us, not deliberately, but because they were so wounded. So my Oma was my first example of love revealing itself or showing itself to me as a child.